welcome to Criminologist et al. Convene, another little initiative by the CrimiTalk. And today we are joined by Dr Gundur. He is a senior lecturer even in criminology at Flinders University in Australia. So our first Australian. So it's just going to be a little brief discussion about his new book that's coming out, trying to make it the enterprises, gangs and people of the American drug trade. So just to start out, how did you get involved in authoring the book? Just a little bit brief insight into your journey.
Well, Jen, thanks so much for having me here. It's great to be here. So this was a project that really started with an interest that I fostered as an undergraduate. I've always been interested in Latin America, and it's something that's been close to my heart. When I was a master's student, I was put in a situation where I needed to find a project very quickly. And so I called one of my old professors up at Tulane University and I had a chat with him. And he suggested that I look into what was happening with the drug cartels. And so that planted a seed in my head in terms of thinking about what the drug trade looks like and how it influences a whole host of different things. Over the course of my career, I started thinking about this problem in a variety of different ways. So what I have produced in this book is really a story of not only the drug trade, but of people who have been impacted by the drug trade, who've participated in the drug trade, and how all of these things fit together.
It's quite interesting that you speak about the people that have been affected by the drug trade as well, because a lot of literature out there and a lot of content and even things that we see on, like Netflix and in true crime often speaks about the people that are perpetrating. And very rarely do you get to hear about the voices and the experiences of people that are on the receiving end of crime. So I know you've touched on it briefly, but do you have anything additional to add about, or just to summarize trying to make it?
Sure. I don't focus hugely on the people who have been really affected by crime, but the little people who are participating in crime. And I would say they have been affected by crime in the sense that they are trying to make their lives in spaces where they're not necessarily welcome. So I'm talking about people who are navigating the complexities of life, right? They're trying to find little spaces where they can maybe establish a business, where they can go up in the world, where they may not see opportunities in the illicit economy. But obviously this has impacts in terms of how people interact with their family members, how they go about thinking about their own lives, their own prospects, how they engage with the world around them. And what we find is that the shows that you mentioned on Netflix and so on, they really glamorize what the drug trade is. They talk about individuals as if they're these kingpins that are out there. But actually, when we think about the drug trade, we need to be thinking about a lot of mom and pop types of enterprises, right? So individuals and small groups that are engaging with the drug trade, even big time traffickers are really small enterprises. They're not big groups of people who are getting things done. They're really logistics companies that are managed by a handful of people who contract out that work to other small enterprises that do bits and pieces here and there.
Right, really interesting. It's great seeing things from a different lens and just understanding different elements of crime, etc. So really appreciate that. So you mentioned kind of your journey into, putting the book together and kind of your experience going through your masters, etc. So what advice would you give to anyone that might be where you were kind of then when you were doing your masters and your undergrad study, and someone that might have intentions of eventually moving on and producing a book about their area of interest?
So I actually did my PhD in Cardiff, so not too far away from where you are right now. And I had a great time there. And I think that one of the core pieces of advice that I can give anybody who's undertaking a doctoral journey is to find supervisors who are going to be supportive of you. And I had two of the best, Martin Ennis and Michael Levy over there at Cardiff. And they were two people who supported me through the entire journey. And they supported me to take risks in terms of my thinking, in terms of my writing, and in terms of the processes that I was engaging with. And I think that that freedom to take risks and to sometimes make mistakes was extremely liberating in terms of being able to carve out a path which was going to be appropriate for me. I think that when you're trying to put together any piece of research, rather it's important to think about how you're going to communicate that research to an audience. And if you start thinking about who you want to talk to over time from a very early stage, then you're going to change the way that you think about how you collect information and package it in a way that's accessible to others. So one of the pieces of advice that I can give you is to keep a journal. Write all the time. Write the things that you observe when you're in the field, if you're doing qualitative work like me, but also try to reflect on the processes that you undertook to get to where you were going, because this will help you be a better storyteller over time. I think that when we reflect on our learning experiences, we tend to latch onto the stories that really resonate with us. And as you were saying before, one of the things that I try to do is to make my work relatable to people regardless of where they're from, their ethnicity, their social position. And so there are pieces in this book where I talk about my own life, the struggles that my father had with addiction, but also I try to talk about people in a way that humanizes them and allows the reader to connect with the individuals who I spoke to in the course of the research that informed this book. I think that as you put together a PhD, one of the things that I would also say is do your best to focus on the fun of it, right? So many times we get bogged down in the things that annoy us or make us angry about the process. But I think never in your life will you have the opportunity to undertake the kind of research that you'll be able to do as a PhD student. And this is something which I think we have to remind ourselves. And the more fun that you have in terms of getting with the data and engaging with the writing process and the communication process, it'll translate into something that you can be proud of.
Oh, definitely. That was amazing advice. So just to kind of summarize, find a great supervisor, take risks, don't be afraid to take risks. And that's something I echo because it's imperative for your learning. If you kind of stick to doing one thing all the time, you won't develop. Journaling, that's amazing advice, and just staying true to kind of the research that you're doing and thinking about the audience. So those are some great takeaways for anyone that's wanting to follow in your footsteps or take elements of kind of your journey and embed it into their own. And thank you, really appreciate you taking the time out today. Before we go, just is there any way that people can contact you, social media, email?
For sure. So I have a website, ravejudgerun.com. It's an anagram of my name, which is Rajiv Gundur. That's harder to spell. So ravejudgerun.com is my website. So there's a snippet of my book that's there and links to my publications. There's also a contact form where folks can get in touch with me. I'm on Twitter at GR4D. And I'm also have a small Facebook page that you can link into. I'm happy to receive emails from people thinking about my work, but also wanting advice about doing similar kinds of studies. I think it's great to have a community, and I really appreciate the initiative that you have right here as a means to connect with other individuals. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much. And that draws us to the end. But again, thank you for taking the time out and the different time zones as well. So yeah, everybody, that's all for us on this Criminologist et al. Convene session. We'll be joined by some other criminologists in a few other ones. So give those a listen. Like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Buy us a coffee. You know how it is. So that's me, Jen, from the CrimiTalk. Thank you.